I'm speaking in a video at work because I've been making videos all day and saying my name over and over. But I thought it was time to talk about my writing over the past year. And I started talking to a friend about it who hasn't seen me all summer and really wasn't paying attention through the first part of the year because she was doing her own thing. And so we were chatting about how I had skipped a May novel release, and she was irritated that I didn't have a new chick lit novel out yet. And I was telling her, but Woodhouse Hall was coming out almost 2 months from today. It will be out. Actually, 2 months from today, it will be out. From the day I'm recording this, it will be out. And she'll have a chick lit book to read. And she asked me how come I didn't publish something in May. Why wasn't it ready in time if I had been so prepared? And I thought, this might be something that's worth explaining in the way authors, so especially self-publishing authors, work. And then we take it back to when I had a publisher for Modern Persuasion, and I had a plan. I had this really good plan. I was going to submit Phi Alpha Pi to them after. I had a third book. I was going to drop the Austen modernizations for a little while to percolate the ideas. And I was going to submit as my third novel, The New Devil's Stories, which at that point had been a novel, but I had been trying to force it into a romance novel when it's really sort of gothic women's fiction to a degree. It's hard to explain, but it was going to be a lot darker, a lot less hopeful than my romance and chick lit is. And it just wasn't working because it's not. And I was trying to force it into this romance framework and romance tropes and themes. And I put it down because I didn't think it had a narrative that worked, which it didn't because this was the wrong genres to think about it for. And then I picked up another book I had been working on for a few years, Missing Augie, which is a mystery focused on a woman whose husband goes away for the weekend and then disappears. And I framed it much more like a traditional cozy mystery. So a year ago, May 2018, I had finished the draft at the end of May, rushed it off to a story editor because it was my original idea, and I was really anxious about my ability to create my own story. And she came back with some very important feedback that I needed that boiled down to this story isn't ready. There are still some big gaps and plot holes and problems and logical leaps that you need to address. She liked the mystery, she liked why the bad guy character, did what was done, but the story itself needed work. And again, I was burnt out from this book. I had been working on it for years. I was struggling with it. It was in its third draft already. I wanted to be done with it. And I sat down in July last year to do Camp NaNoWriMo, and I was going to write a modernization of Emma in the Yarn Store. But I was really trying to fit it into the romance-specific genre, subplots, plots, themes, tropes, all of it. And there was no romance. And it was at the moment when I was realizing that I was writing chick lit and not romance most of the time. So as I struggled with it, the night before NaNoWriMo started, it felt like, and I think you can still see it on like my Instagram and Twitter and Facebook stuff, it was like 2 or 3 nights before, and I had this crazy idea that Emma needed to be set on a college campus, dealing with a dorm, and then I could bring in the romance, and I could have the fun that Emma really deserves, because Emma deserves to be a fun story. It should not be mired in failure, because it is about failure, but it's about structured failure. So I scrapped everything, and over July, August, September, and October, I played with what is now Woodhouse Hall. But I was months off of my plan, and I really need a year with a manuscript to make it work, because it needs time for me to get distant from it, edit it, share it with other people, get their feedback, make the changes, send it to my editor, and then make the changes from the editor, and then send it to the proofreader and make their changes. It's a year-long process for me. I can't do this for a full-length novel. I can't do this quickly. So I realized I needed to rethink this publishing schedule. At this point, I was self-publishing. It's my own schedule. Phi Alpha Pi came out, and I started writing the short stories for Krowlack, and the other 2 novels I had originally planned were thrown out the window. They no longer had a place in my plan or I needed to find a new place for them in my plan. So I decided, sitting in the car while my parents are driving me around Miami and I'm getting ready to go to Orlando to research Northanger Parks, which I'm super excited about, I decided, Woodhouse Hall a year. And instead of publishing something in May, I would let it percolate and develop and flesh it out through another year and not come back to it and publish it till October. And it made sense. This is an academic year story. Setting it in fall and then releasing it in fall, or starting it in fall and releasing it in fall, makes so much more sense. And a lot more people are around in the fall. And I'll have a year to do the publicity and promote it as a summer read. It doesn't need to be done any other way. There's no rules. It's my book. It's my publishing. And then I thought, well, what do I do in the beginning of the year? I want to publish something in May. I don't want to go for a full year without anything for people to read. And that's where Crowlack came in. But also in that car ride, as I openly complained to my mother that I was tired of Christmas holiday stories dominating the market and nobody doing anything for Hanukkah, when she said to me, well, why don't you write it? I decided, let's write it. Let's sit down, see what happens. And initially it was going to be the short story for Dangerous Curves Ahead, which turned out to be another story for Lydia in the end. And only because I decided to pick Jenna from Woodhouse Hall and tell her story. And the plan was never to start with Poor and Fling and Matzo Ball Billionaire. It was to start now and promote from here for the High Holiday story, and then use that to lead into the Hanukkah story, and then follow the Jewish calendar instead of the Christian calendar. But when the Poor and Fling story ended up being a novelette instead of a short story, so much longer, 16,000 words. Yeah, 16,000 words. Latkes of Love ended up being 20,000 words. I mean, these are short, they're fast reads, but they're not really short stories. And this was too long for the submission to the anthology. I had to come up with another idea, and I played with this idea from Lydia's point of view that I had held back on for the short story collection, A Little More Phi Alpha Pi. So I wrote that. It was perfect. It was exactly what I needed. It's exactly what Lydia needed. It was perfect for the anthology, and I submitted it. And then decided, let's start now. Let's just do Purim now, which really put me in a challenging position to write Poor and Fling and a Matzo Ball Billionaire within a month of each other, and then give me the breathing room for Forgive Me, I Love You and Latkes of Love, which I needed at that point. So I realized I was going to have plenty published. I wasn't worried about Woodhouse Hall. And people still asked about when the next novel was coming out, and I calmly say, oh God, I got to get through the Jewish holiday stuff. Oh, it's going to be out in October. Oh, I'm thinking of a co-Halloween promotion with the Crowlack stuff. It was enough. The 4 novelettes, the short story collection, the other content I was creating, Patreon's project right soon, it all fell into place so that Woodhouse Hall sort of caps off my year and is the final product from this year. And then next year we'll have hopefully far less. Right soon may or may not become its own publication. It might solely exist in Patreon, but I'm not giving up Patreon after that. I really liked this, and I think I might take Missing Augie to Patreon as the second year's project, because I still love it. I still think it can work, but I think it needs the Patreon treatment. I rewrite the first draft or the 4th draft and then publish it on Patreon for feedback and a beta read, essentially, dealing with the story gaps and the plot holes and the problems and the research needed as we go, and allowing the Patreon supporters to participate in that while Northanger Parks is being published and edited and gotten ready for publication, and the short story collection, and even maybe another short story collection. I'm not sure. But Northanger Parks is so much farther along than I thought it would be. I might be able to do that and publish that in the summer. I don't even know yet. I'm not committing it to a specific date, just trying to get it out in 2020. And I think we can revisit the New Devil stories and make it a story, make it a novel, not just a collection of short stories, because there are some fun elements in it. There are some crazy elements in it, and I have short stories to go with it. It is what it is. And then there's the stash. And it might be that Patreon becomes my system of writing and publishing. That the Patreon people get things before they're ready to be published novels or published story collections. And everything filters through it. And then, of course, there's this idea that I had to do the Jewish life cycle stories, going back to the spicy, sexy stories that the holiday stories were, and focusing on birth, bar, bat mitzvah, marriage, and death, and maybe sneaking in a divorce there. And I believe we can take the characters from the Yom Tov series and sort of make them the entry in, start with marriage, maybe Jenna and Asher, or Nora and Noah, or even though you haven't really met them yet, Max and Rachel, maybe one of those couples as our entry through marriage, but using them as sort of a backbone to the story and introducing new couples and less traditional relationships. Looking at a different age group, my own age group, especially for the marriage and the divorce and the bar mitzvah and the death stories. These are things that in romance can happen at mature ages. But those are far, far, far away, I think. I don't know anymore, because this year has taught me not to say I can't do something, or to say this is the plan I have and let's stick to it. This was truly the year that I broke that apart and really had to think about my production and the way I want to do this as publishing. So that's the story of this past year, and it's not even over yet. I keep thinking, oh, I'm just gonna, spend the next 4 months editing and writing short stories. The next thing you know, I'm gonna have Northanger Parks ready for publication in May, and it's gonna be like, duh. It will make sense. It will happen when it's right. But you're going to get to enjoy Woodhouse Hall and see Jenna from Porn Fling and Matzo Ball Billionaire before she was anything. She is naive and innocent and stupid and a little entitled, and she's 18. You can't do anything different. She's not the woman you meet at Porn Fling, and that might piss you off, but I will continue to remind you, she's 18 in the novel and older, 6 years older-ish in the novelette. So there's a lot of growth that happens for her. But I think you're going to like it. I think you're going to like Woodhouse Hall. And so I hope to hear from you about your feelings in reviews and on these videos. Thanks.